So, if I was a student, I was going to say, why are we taking this lesson? Like, for God's sake, why are we taking it? It's not relevant to us, yeah? Like, it's about India, but maybe you're not Indian, right? And it's just a lesson in history and something that ended way back ago. How is this still like beneficial and helpful? Well, take this as an opportunity for you to think and to imagine your culture being mixed with other five cultures. Like, what kind of food and art and language can you create? Think about it, because that's basically what the Mughals did when they created the Mughals empire. They're not like one group of people created something and like created a house. No, they're a huge mix of people who mixed up together to form one of the most richest, strongest, and biggest empires in the entire history. And this is our lesson for today. So, the Mughal Empire in India, the big idea behind this lesson is that the Mughal Empire brought Turks, Persians, and Indians together in a vast empire. Now, today, if I bring a Turk, a Persian guy, and like an Indian guy, and all of them in the same room, they're not going to agree or like be friends or even know how to communicate. Back then, they did it. So, why it matters now? The legacy of great art and deep social division left by the Mughal Empire still influences today's Southern Asia. So, the setting stage, the Gupta Empire. Here, for this, I would like to first go to this beautiful timeline just to like make a clear understanding about what is the Gupta Empire and what's the Mughal Empire before we dive into the lesson, because this is a bit, the terminologies might mix up. So I will try to zoom in here for the Gupta Empire. It was an Indian empire, fully inside India. It ruled northern India from around 320 to 550. It was one of the golden ages of Indian history, full of art, science, and literature. Then this empire, called Gupta Empire, collapsed and ended. But who ended it? It was a group called the Huns, who are to be the nomadic tribes from Central Asia. These Huns came to Gupta and destroyed it by their invasion, and Gupta ended by the year 400. Now we're done with the Gupta Empire. Bye bye. Let us go now to the creation of the Mughal Empire, which is our main focus for the lesson. It came much later, around 1526. And before it, between the Gupta Empire and the Mughal Empire, so many things happened. And I'll explain. Because in northern part of India or in India back then, it didn't start like, oh, Gupta Empire, oh, it ended, oh, we have Mughal Empire. No, 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 no. We have stories, we have history. So it also, the Mughal Empire, it's inside of India, not in any other country. But its founders, okay, here where it gets a bit confusing. Just watch. The founders of the Mughal Empire, the Babar, he came from outside India. He was not Indian. This guy, Babar, was not Indian. He came from Central Asia, near what we call right now Afghanistan or as Pakistan. Okay? And they, again, focused, they had Mongol ancestors. For the Mongol, which is another thing in another country, okay? We have a very famous emperor called Genghis Khan. So, Babar and the people who created the Mughal Empire, not only Babar, people before him and after him came, they were the descendants of the Mongol. That's why they call themselves the Mughals. So they're not Mongolian, they're Indian, but they call themselves the Mughals. Why Mughals, miss? Because they're descendants of the greatest emperors and leaders of the Mongol. But the empire they built was Indian, not Mongolian. Okay, that was an introduction that your book doesn't offer. So just to have like a background about what's happening before we dive in into your book. Gupta Empire crumbled in the late 400s. First Huns from Central Asia invaded, and then after that in the 700s, which is basically the 8th century, India was divided into small kingdoms, okay? And then those people who invaded it in the 8th century are descendants from Muslim Turks and Afghans. And this is what we will read about in few. Their leader was descendant of Timur the Lame and of the Mongol conqueror Genghis Khan. So basically just telling me the heritage and the nationality of the guys and the people who invaded India into small kingdoms. And they call themselves the Mughals, okay? Which means Mongols. So, although the Mongols themselves did not directly affect much of India, like Mongolia itself as a country, as an empire, did not come near India, it was the people and their culture and their heritage, okay, who actually were descendants of the Mongols, the real ones. So now we're going to see how the Mughal Empire got formed. So I've created this document to help us understand a bit in a shorter way, okay? So I will go first to start with the 8th century. What happened in the 8th century? Okay, maybe if, no, let me just do it like this. Okay, so now let us see, I have created this document that basically explains this entire document that you have for the early history of the Mughals. So I'll try to explain it here and then go back to our document of the book. The 8th century, India was not, I'm here, if in case like you want to read with me, so I'm here. India was not one big country. It was made up of small Hindu kingdoms. Okay, it was not Muslim back then, it was Hindu. Around this time, Muslim groups from Central Asia and the Middle East began moving into nearby regions, including the Indus River Valley. What is the Indus River Valley? It's Pakistan today. These early Muslims' arrivals clashed with the local Hindu rulers. So India was, again, it was small kingdoms. All of them are Hindus. And then boom, they have the Muslims. And they were not okay with it. They were not okay because the Muslims wanted to take the land. The Hindus wanted to protect their small kingdoms. And then for about 300 years, Muslims only reached as far as Pakistan, basically, or the Indus area. And they could not go deeper to conquer India fully, okay? Because the Hindus leaders were very strong. Then what happened? There was something called the Turkish invasion. There was a very, very strong Muslim leader. His name is Sultan Muhammad Ghazani. This guy suddenly appears. And let's have a look and let's see what he looks like. This is what Sultan Mahmud or Muhammad Ghazali looks like. And he's a mix of Turkey and Afghani. He's a Turkish Afghani, okay? What he did is actually, he was Turkish and ruled from Ghazni, which is now, today, it's Afghanistan. And the year 1000, he led 17 invasions to India. Not only one war, 17 wars. He destroyed Hindu temples and cities. He destroyed basically everything in these small kingdoms. Not mainly to convert people, but to take treasures and wealth because he loved money, okay? He was a bougie. And then these repeated attacks weakened the northern India, making it easier for later Muslim rulers to take it. So Muslim people were very strong in the Hindu kingdoms, okay? Until this guy, Sultan of Ghazni, invaded it. And then India became very weak and they surrendered to Muslims. And Muslims ever since started to rule it, okay? Now, let's go to the second part, which is the Delhi of Sultanate. So, after Mahmud time, the new Turkish and Afghan warlords settled and ruled parts of northern India. They made Delhi their capital. So Delhi was the capital. And this period became known as the Delhi Sultanate period. It's where Muslims started to rule India, one after another. And the rulers, they were not called kings and queens and all of that. Mm-mm. They were called sultans. Sultans. Sultan Muhammad, Sultan Babur, and so on. They treated many Hindus as conquered people, but their rule also introduced Persian culture, language, art, and Islamic architecture to India. So basically, back then, India was a mix of Iran, Pakistan, Afghan, Turkey, Middle East, Arab, Hindu. It was a mix of everything, okay? And this was the first major period of Muslim rule in Indian history. It's the Delhi Sultanate. Okay? Now, after that, who came? Our guy Babur came. Now, of course, I'm not going to speak about Babur before we see how Babur looks like. Ready? One, two, three. Ta-da! This is what he looks like. Okay? So this is Babur. So Babur was descended of Timur the Lame and Genghis Khan. So Timur the Lame and Genghis Khan, both of them are Mongolian, okay, from Mongolia, the country or the empire, from both mother and father side. So if he's Mongolian, like pure descendant of Mongolians, why is he in India? What is he doing in India? Girls, it was like that back then. It was a mix. The Mughal Empire is a mixture of different cultures. So he came from Central Asia, which is right now it's Uzbekistan, and he saw that the Delhi Sultanate was so weak. So he was so smart to invade it. And here I need to go back to your book and read from it because we skipped important information. So I'll start from the basically the this part is the same as the one that I read for you. There's nothing like I have skipped. And then I will go to the Delhi Sultanate. Between the 30th and the 60th century, 33 different sultans ruled this divided territory from their seat in Delhi. Can you imagine 33 rulers? So, in 1398, Timur the Lame destroyed Delhi. And the city was so completely devastated that, according to one witness, for a month, not a bird moved in the city. When birds don't come to the city, it means it's so bad. So Delhi eventually was rebuilt, but it was not until the 60th century that a leader arose who would unify the empire. Okay, now let us go to Babur. Babur founds an empire. So in 1494, an 11-year-old boy named Babur, who continued both Timur the Lame and Genghis Khan as ancestors, inherited a kingdom in Central Asia. It was only a tiny kingdom, and his elders soon took it away and drove him south. But Babur built up an army. In the years that followed, he swept down into India and laid the foundation of the vast Mughal Empire. So, how old was Babur when he actually became an emperor or a leader? It was when he was 11, only 11 years old. Like an 11-year-old of today is like playing Roblox. Back then, they used to conquer empires and lead huge army. So, of course, I'm not going to compare. That's a silly comparison, but just to tell you, like, he was only 11, and it's a big deal, to be honest. And then Babur was a brilliant general. He was not bad, he was brilliant. Obviously, he's 11 years old. And in 1526, for example, he led 12,000 troops to victory against an army of 100,000 commanded by a Sultan of Delhi. Can you imagine what it means to fight having like only 12,000 against an army of 100,000? That's insane. That's what makes Babur so special and brilliant and so on. The history witnessed that for him. And a year later, Babur also defeated a massive Rajput army, which is basically soldiers who belong to regional warrior clans. Are you ready to see them? To see what the Rajput looks like? This is what they look like. Okay? Very aggressive. They come from warriors clans. So after Babur's death, his incompetent son, Humayun, lost most, basically incompetent mean he was not as great as his father Babur. He couldn't do what his father did. He couldn't maintain what his father worked so hard for. He lost most of the territory Babur had gained. Babur, a 13-year-old son or grandson, followed Humayun, which is basically was after Humayun. And this great 13-year-old grandson name is what? His name is Akbar. Now we are going to move to Akbar's golden age. So Akbar was Babur's grandson, and his name Akbar means the great, and he lived up to his name because he was very great, ruling India with wisdom and tolerance from the year 1556 to 1605. So a military conqueror. Akbar recognized the military power as the root of his strength. He was very strong, okay? And in his opinion, a king must always, this is important, a king must be always what? Soft? Aggressive. He must be very aggressive so that his neighbors will not try to conquer him. He had a country to protect, okay? An empire to protect. Like the Savoids and the Ottomans, Akbar equipped his armies with heavy artillery. Cannons enabled him to break into walled cities and extend his rule into much of the Deccan Plateau. In a brilliant move, he appointed some Rajputs as officers. So basically, he made these his officers who run the empire. And in this way, he turned potential enemies into allies. So all the people who hated him and didn't like him, they knew that Akbar is so strong and so wealthy, and he had the Rajputs beside him. So instead of like rescuing their lives coming against him, they were like, you know what? Let's be ally with him because he's the strongest. So instead of like we risk ourselves, let's just be with him. So this combination of military power and political wisdom enabled Akbar to unify a land of at least, listen to this, 100 million people, more than in all of Europe put together. Can you just believe like that? That's insane. Just read it again to know how insane is this. Now, here I have a very like simple map, but just to show you like the Mughal Empire and how it grew. So, first, during Babur, it looked like this. Okay, it's big, but not that big. But it's actually great because Babur was what? Was very brave, and he had great tactics when it came to facing bigger troops, right? And then Akbar came and he actually, how can I remove this? He actually obtained all of this land. And then later on, and this is for part 2 of this lesson, which is Aurangzeb, who actually did more of great job, and all of that became the Mughal Empire. So the Mughal Empire started like this, then like this, and like this, okay? And all of this together during Akbar time, do you see all of this is now bigger than the entire part of Europe as a continent. Okay, let us continue. a liberal ruler. Akbar was a genius at cultural blending. He was what? A genius at cultural blending. So he loved to be an open minded person. Let me highlight this. Okay, he continued the Islamic tradition of religious freedom. So he was not close minded, open minded. He permitted people of other religion to practice their faith. He proved his tolerance by marrying Hindu princess without forcing them to convert princesses, okay? So he allowed his wives to practice their religious rituals in the palace. He proved his tolerance again by abolishing both the tax on Hindu pilgrims and the hated jizya or taxes on non-Muslims, because back then if you're not Muslim you have to pay money. So guess what? Akbar, because he's the greatest, he removed that. He even appointed a Spanish Jesuit to tutor his second son, which means his sons were able to learn languages, and this indicates how of very again culturally blended guy he was. Akbar governed through bureaucracy of officials. Natives and foreigners, Hindus and Muslims could all rise to high offices. So it's not like, oh, you're a Muslim, you're going to work in the government. If you're not, just go out, I'll send you to exile. No, they all worked together in harmony and respect. This approach contributed to the quality of his government. Akbar, chief finance minister to Dalmar, was a Hindu, created a clever and an effective taxation policy. So this guy, the finance minister, helped him to make his empire very wealthy and very rich. So let us continue. He leveled taxes similar to the present day US graduate income tax, calculating it as a percentage of the value that the peasants crops. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to give you like an example of this. You work, okay? And in a month you get 1,000, okay? I'm gonna take 30% of your salary for the government. See, I'm gonna calculate it as in a percentage. So if you take 1,000 and I'm gonna take 30%, so I'm gonna take what? 300. So the 300 will go to the government fund box, and they can enjoy the money and make the empire wealthy, okay? So let us continue. Because this tax was fair and affordable, so of course he made the percentage very affordable to people. He didn't take all of their money. It was a very small amount and everyone had to pay it. The number of the peasants who paid it increased, and this payment bought in much needed money for the empire. And when the empire is so rich, what does that mean? It's going to be protected from everything that is bad. Let us continue. Akbar land's policies had made more mixed results. He gave generous land grants to his bureaucrats, and after they died, however, he reclaimed the lands and distributed them as he saw fit. On a positive side, this policy prevented the growth of the feudal aristocrats, like the rich people. And on the other hand, it did not encourage dedication and hard work by the Mughal officials. Their children would not inherit the land or benefit from their parents' work. So the officials apparently saw no point in devoting themselves to the property. So that was regarding Akbar. This is an image of Akbar. This is Bismillah. This is Timur the Lame. Okay, this was the grandfather of Babur. Okay, and he was what? Yeah, that was like, yeah, he was Mongolian basically. Okay, let us look to see who's Genghis Khan. Can we see that? Genghis Khan. Let us see. This is what he looked like. Let's say like this is what he looked like. And he's a Mongolian. Anyways, that's it for today's lesson. I hope that you understood everything. Good luck and bye-bye.